When an undefeated heavyweight champion was stunned by a very less-rated replacement fighter, the boxing world was shattered that night. Andy Ruiz Jr. delivered one of the biggest shocks in heavyweight history, taking Anthony Joshua's IBF, WBO, and WBA titles in a breathtaking display of skill and power. 4 times, Ruiz floored Joshua, knocking him out in the 7th round at Madison Square Garden. This wasn't a fluke, it was a breakdown of a champion who looked shattered from the start. So what exactly led to Joshua's defeat? Let's break it down, but before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe. Anthony Joshua's big night in the US was supposed to be the moment. His US debut at Madison Square Garden on June 1st was billed as nothing short of a boxing coronation. The plan was to beat Gerald Big Baby Miller, claim the crown, and officially become the king of boxing in front of an American audience. The hype was real. This wasn't just another fight, it was history in the making. The pre-sale for the event smashed Madison Square Garden's boxing records, and Joshua was set to walk away with a jaw-dropping $25 million. Some reports even pushed that number closer to $32 million. Meanwhile, Miller wasn't doing too shabby himself, with a career-high purse of $4.875 million and a juicy deal with DAZN that promised $3 million more for 2 additional fights. On paper, this wasn't supposed to be a contest. Joshua was supposed to enter the ring as a 1-25 favorite. He was the undefeated wrecking ball with 22 wins, 21 of them by knockout. The world expected him to add Miller to his highlight reel. Anthony Joshua wasn't just a champ, he was the champ. With 3 of the 4 major heavyweight titles already under his belt, he was a crowd magnet, packing over 60,000 screaming fans into stadiums across the UK. With a win, he'd hold all the cards for future mega fights with WBC champ Deontay Wilder and the undefeated Tyson Fury. But then, drama hit, and it hit hard. On April 17, 2019, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association dropped a bombshell. Miller had tested positive for GW1516, a banned substance. This wasn't some little mistake either. The results came from a random urine test on March 20th. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, further tests from March 31st confirmed Miller had EPO, HGH, and WG1516 in his system. Yep, a cocktail of trouble. The New York State Athletic Commission wasted no time denying Miller a boxing license. Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, scrambled to find a new opponent, and the fight world was left reeling. What was supposed to be a grand US debut for Joshua had suddenly turned into chaos. But when Gerald Miller got the boot for failing drug tests, boxers like Ivan Ditchko and Manuel Char threw their challenge in the ring, eager for a shot at the champ. But then Andy Ruiz Jr., a former world title challenger with a record of 31-1 and 20 knockouts, stepped up. Fresh off a fight with Alexander Dmytrenko on April 20th, Ruiz made it clear he wanted the chance to take on Joshua. And on May 1st, just a month before the fight, it was official. Joshua versus Ruiz was set for June 1st, 2019 at Madison Square Garden. Now, let's be real, no one was betting on Ruiz. Joshua was a massive plus 2,200 favorite. Sure, some insiders thought Ruiz would give a tougher fight than Miller, but tough enough to win? Not a chance. Ruiz wasn't exactly a household name, and he'd only gone 12 rounds once in his career. Meanwhile, Joshua had nearly done the same, including his unforgettable 11th round knockout of Vladimir Klitschko. Compared to Klitschko, Ruiz seemed out of his league, but Ruiz wasn't coming in blind. The guy did his homework. He studied Mike Tyson's moves, looking for tricks to handle bigger opponents, and zeroed in on weaknesses in Joshua's game. He wasn't planning just to survive, he was planning to shock the world. June 1st, 2019, Madison Square Garden. The arena was electric. British fans packed the seats, chanting and waving flags, expecting nothing less than another dominant Joshua victory. It was supposed to be a celebration, a walk in the park. But as the saying goes in boxing, anything can happen under the lights. And that night, anything did. About 50 seconds into the fight, Andy Ruiz made his presence known. He forced Joshua to the ropes and fired off a straight right followed by a grazing left hook. Neither punch rocked Joshua, but it sent a clear message. Ruiz wasn't here to roll over. Joshua spun off the ropes and danced away, clearly not interested in staying within striking distance. That moment, it gave Ruiz confidence. The tools that had worked against other fighters would work here too. For Joshua, it was a wake-up call. Ruiz wasn't some walk-in-the-park replacement. The first 2 rounds were more of a chess match than a slugfest. Both fighters spent the time feeling each other out. Joshua threw 47 punches but only landed 9. Ruiz was even quieter, landing just 3 out of 31. The judges gave both rounds to Joshua, but it was clear Ruiz wasn't just there to cash a check. He came to fight. Joshua had the physical advantage, 4 inches taller, 8 inches longer in reach, and a jab that could double as a power punch. But Ruiz wasn't intimidated. He closed the distance, taking away some of Joshua's strengths and creating openings to land his own shots. The underdog was making himself at home, and the so-called victory night for Joshua was starting to feel anything but guaranteed. All night long, Andy Ruiz had Anthony Joshua on the back foot. Even in the rounds Joshua won, Ruiz was the one pressing forward, forcing Joshua to move and rethink his game. Joshua, a towering powerhouse, is known for his crushing punches when he plants his feet, but Ruiz didn't give him that chance. From the get-go, Ruiz pushed Joshua backwards, and it paid off. It dulled the power of Joshua's punches and gave Ruiz the opportunity to land some of his own. Despite his flabby frame, Ruiz showed he had quick hands and serious pop, making it clear Joshua couldn't afford to get careless. Every time Joshua threw, Ruiz was right there firing back. Then came the third round, where everything changed.
Ruiz mixes it up. Good overcut and a hook. Puts Ruiz down. Wow, that was fast from Joshua.
6, 7. More than 2
Joshua
minutes.
dropped Ruiz with a clean shot, sending him to the ground. For a moment, it looked like the end was near, but Ruiz wasn't done. Like Buster Douglas against Mike Tyson in 1990, Ruiz took a second, collected himself, and got right back in the fight. Joshua, one of the best finishers in boxing, smelled blood and went in for the kill. He landed a near-perfect right cross to Ruiz's chin, one of the hardest punches of the fight, a punch that could have ended anyone else's night. But not Ruiz. Now he barely budged. Joshua followed with a hook and an uppercut, but Ruiz ducked under the left hook like it was nothing, showing he was still in full control of his senses. Ruiz wasn't about to let him off the hook. He pounced like a lion on wounded prey. And then it happened. Ruiz, cool as ever, threw a left hook of his own. What happened next? Madison Square Garden witnessed one of the most shocking moments in boxing history. In fact, it literally lit up. That single punch sent a shockwave through the crowd of 19,000. People were buzzing. Was this really happening? Could they actually be watching the unthinkable unfold? That left hook didn't just land, it changed everything. It smacked Joshua just above his right ear, and the big man staggered backwards, clearly hurt, down to the ground. Joshua later claimed it hit the top of his head, but let's be real, it was that perfectly placed shot above the ear that started the spiral. From that moment on, Joshua was in a fog he just couldn't shake. The tide had turned, and the fight would never be the same. The fog that clouded Anthony Joshua's night wasn't some mystery, it was pure boxer error. When Joshua landed that massive right hand on Ruiz, it should have been game over. That punch was enough to seal the round, maybe even the fight. But instead of stepping back, resetting, and using his athleticism to control the ring, Joshua did the opposite. He turtled up, hands high, and stayed in the danger zone. That knockdown in the third woke something up in Ruiz, and he came out swinging at every chance he got. For Ruiz to win, he needed to turn the fight into a brawl, and Joshua gave him exactly what he needed. Instead of keeping his distance, using his height and reach to pick Ruiz apart, Joshua stood his ground in the middle of the ring. Bad move. By now, Joshua's discomfort was obvious. Was it a stamina issue, a lapse in focus, or maybe he just wasn't prepared for a late replacement like Ruiz? Whatever the reason, this wasn't the Anthony Joshua that the 8,000 British fans who traveled across the Atlantic were used to cheering for. Something was off, and the momentum was all Ruiz's. By the 6th round, the cracks were showing. Andy Ruiz landed a slick left hook and right-hand combo that rocked Anthony Joshua early on. From there, Ruiz started picking him apart, landing shots at Joshua's head almost at will. The once dominant champ now looked exhausted, with his arms hanging low and his legs wobbling like they didn't know what to do anymore. Then came the 7th round, the round that sealed the deal. Ruiz went full throttle, throwing punches and bunches and overwhelming Joshua. Down went Joshua again, hitting the ground hard. The crowd, dead silent. Could this really be happening? Seconds later, Joshua was on all fours. He spat out his gum shield, a clear sign he needed more time. But it wasn't fooling anyone. He staggered back to the ropes, and the referee had seen enough. It was over. Andy Ruiz Jr. had shocked the world. BBC pundit Steve Bunce didn't sugarcoat it. Anthony Joshua was a broken man in that 7th round. He spat his gum shield out and went back to the ropes, and the referee had no option but to stop the fight. Anthony Joshua can't just shrug this off and say, "What a great fight, everyone was entertained." That's not good enough. The unbeatable giant had been toppled, and Ruiz, the underdog no one believed in, had just made history. Former world heavyweight champion and boxing pundit David Haye didn't hold back when talking about Anthony Joshua's shocking loss to Andy Ruiz Jr. He said, if Anthony Joshua is as healthy and fit as he says he is, then something went wrong. He needs something in his camp that he didn't have. Hay admitted it was a fantastic night of boxing, but added, unfortunately, the Brit lost his belts. This is why I love heavyweight boxing. Anything can happen on the night. His invincibility is gone, and he's now just a mere mortal. Fighters now know they just have to stick in there and keep throwing body shots. Joshua's performance was marred by poor strategy and shaky stamina. Let's be real, trying to brawl with Andy Ruiz Jr. is like brawling with a prime Buster Mathis Jr. or even Mike Tyson at 35 years old. It's not a smart move. Joshua needed to be lighter, sharper, and more disciplined. He should have forced Ruiz to work harder for every punch, using his height and reach to stay in control. A better work rate, stronger defense, and improved stamina would have given him a fighting chance in those later rounds of intense action. For Joshua to reclaim his throne, he needs to rethink his approach. The goal? Become the Michael Jordan of heavyweight boxing, leaner, faster, and smarter. At an ideal weight of 230 pounds, Joshua could return stronger than ever and prove he's still one of the best in the game. After his shocking loss to Andy Ruiz Jr., Anthony Joshua didn't want to make excuses, but he couldn't help saying, "I didn't have the same tenacity and energy I always have." That comment had fans scratching their heads. Was it nerves? A bad game plan? Something in the water? Former featherweight and super bantamweight world champion Carl Frampton called it the biggest shock I've ever seen in my whole days in boxing, and it's live. Frampton didn't stop there. He praised promoter Eddie Hearn's honesty about the stakes. Anthony Joshua must win the rematch. Where does he stand if he loses that? But while Joshua was suffering from emotional defeat, fans were expecting a rematch. On August 8, 2019, fans got the news they'd been waiting for. Joshua was officially getting his rematch against Ruiz. The fight, set for December 7, 2019, wouldn't be in the UK though. Ruiz had made it clear he wouldn't fight there after the controversy surrounding Dillian Whyte's failed drug test. Instead, the bout would take place in Diriyah, Saudi Arabia at the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Al Turaif. Joshua showed up noticeably slimmer for the rematch, trading bulk for agility. He explained the change, saying it wasn't about losing weight, it was about putting in 6 months of work instead of 3. Fans hoped the extra time would pay off, but the pressure was sky high. Ruiz had exposed cracks in Joshua's game, and everyone knew it. To regain his titles, Joshua needed more than just a new training routine. He had to adjust his entire strategy or risk another humiliating loss. The rematch wasn't just about titles, it was about redemption. Could Joshua rise to the occasion, or would Ruiz prove that lightning can strike twice? All eyes were on Saudi Arabia to find out. December 7th, 2019, the stage was set in Diriyah, Saudi Arabia, in a purpose-built 15,000-seat arena, where the desert skies didn't just bring sunshine, they delivered a downpour. But the rain didn't drown Anthony Joshua's hopes. He delivered his most disciplined and controlled performance yet, and avoided the disaster that many feared after his loss to Andy Ruiz Jr. Joshua started strong, drawing blood from Ruiz Jr. early on. He looked much more relaxed compared to the chaos of their first fight, and his right hook landed like a shot from a cannon, clearly doing damage. But just when it seemed like Joshua might sail through without trouble, disaster almost struck. In the second round, Ruiz Jr. retaliated, landing a punch that caused a similar cut above Joshua's eye. Joshua, however, stayed calm and poised, and the wound didn't seem to shake him. Joshua managed to keep Ruiz Jr. at bay by using his superior movement and longer reach. He danced around the shorter, heavier champion, flicking out jabs whenever Ruiz Jr. tried to close the distance. But Ruiz wasn't done just yet. At the end of the fourth round, he landed an overhand right that caught Joshua off guard. Joshua felt the sting, but luckily for him, the bell rang just in time to save him from any further damage. Despite the pressure, Joshua stuck to his game plan, with his trainer Rob McCracken cheering him on from the corner. Joshua was lighter than ever, weighing in 10 pounds less than in their first fight, and he had enough energy to keep Ruiz Jr. at a distance. In the sixth round, Joshua landed a powerful left hook, but Ruiz Jr. wasn't backing down. He kept plodding forward, determined to land his own punches. The build-up to the fight had been respectful, but by the end of the sixth, Joshua shot a sharp, spiteful stare at Ruiz Jr. after the Mexican fighter threw 2 illegal punches. By the seventh, Ruiz Jr. was visibly frustrated. The referee had to step in, giving him a warning for more illegal shots. Things were heating up, but Joshua kept his cool and stayed focused on winning. They went toe-to-toe for the first time in the 8th round, and it looked like a replay of their first fight when Joshua had been knocked down. But this time, Joshua stood strong and didn't fall. Ruiz Jr.'s eyes lit up when he landed some hard punches to the side of Joshua's head. The crowd gasped, but Joshua stayed on his feet. He took even more punishment in the 9th, but still didn't go down. It was Joshua's skill and finesse that carried him through, even landing a solid right hand in the final round. In the end, Joshua proved himself to be a 2-time heavyweight champion, joining legends like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Lennox Lewis in making a comeback after a loss. With scores of 118 to 110 and 119 to 109, the world titles were back around Joshua's waist. He celebrated with his family and shared a respectful embrace with Ruiz Jr. after the decision. However, Ruiz's win is now part of heavyweight history, standing alongside other legendary upsets like Buster Douglas's knockout of Mike Tyson in 1990, Oliver McCall's shocking win over Lennox Lewis in 1994, and Muhammad Ali's famous rope-a-dope against George Foreman in 1974. It's one of those moments in boxing that people will talk about for years to come. But what do you think about the first match? Was Ruiz the better fighter, or was it luck that wielded the win for him? Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on our next video.